Hi, everyone. Just before we get going, I want to remind you that everything we talk about and discuss should not be considered as investment advice. The purpose of what we talk about on Catherine Murray Media and Markets on YouTube, as well as Catherine Murray in Conversation with on my podcast, should be viewed as informational and entertainment purposes only. Please definitely do your own research, your own homework, and definitely consult an investment professional before making any investment decisions. And also to note, some of us might hold positions in some of the stocks that we discuss. Joe, great to be able to catch up with you and to be in this longer conversation format. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Yeah, great to be with you today, Catherine.
And certainly a lot to discuss, from the world and COVID and how you see it. But I also want to just kind of, start with what you've been doing most recently and in amongst COVID, launching a new brand and a partnership with Toys R Us Canada, Rise Little Earthling, which is just the sweetest little name. But give us a bit of a backdrop in terms of how this came to be.
Yeah. So Vic Bertrand, who's the CEO of Toys R Us, called me up about now 14 months ago, just before COVID. Actually, it was more than 14 months, 18 months now, I guess, and said, I've just taken over at the helm of Toys R Us. Why don't we have lunch? We had lunch just around the corner from my office, and he started talking about his vision, which was very exciting, and how he was going to reposition Toys R Us and the challenge of being in the toy business and the competitive set. And he was mentioning how unhappy he was with the apparel assortment within Toys R Us. Mm-hmm. And so one thing led to another. And I said, well, let me have a look at it, and I'll let me get back to you with some ideas. And looked at it, loved the opportunity, loved their positioning in the baby space. Babies R Us, and that, where they're positioned in babies, I think is fantastic. I also thought that his vision for expansion within the stores and how he could create a whole new idea. He called it, his vision is the happy store, and how he was going to bring new concepts, and how he's going to change many of the locations into specialized offerings. And so one thing led to another. I love creating a brand. There's nothing more fun than creating a brand from scratch. And being able to, you're given a clean slate. And, the deal we made was, you take it over, it's yours, make it happen. And I think that always excites me, when I can go in and not be sort of a part of other brands and other stories, but really to come in and be able to shape the brand in a unique way. And what I saw in the marketplace at the time was this move towards social consciousness, the environment, and that there was a movement with consumers that they wanted to vote with their wallets as much as price and taste. And so we started the brand with that premise. The premise was, organic. So the line is 95% organic. We started with little things like the hanger, which is a completely recyclable hanger. It's kind of a bugaboo of mine. The hanger is symbolic of the brand, because when you take a look at the hanger, I have a hanger here, I can just show you quickly. But this little hanger is made of recycled material. It's complete card stock, and it can go right back into the environment. But what's really nice about this is that it cuts out all that plastic that you would normally see in popular priced product. And so, it's not a big deal, but it is really a symbolic gesture. I think the other thing we did was we looked at our graphics in a very different way. We created these monsters. We have a cast of monsters that are all they're all social. They're all social warriors. And what's really interesting about them is that each one is a champion in their area. So we've got Cosmo, who
Mm-hmm.
appears. He's our dot. So Cosmo, when
Oh,
you look very, very closely, there's Cosmo. He's a carbon eater. Uh,
oh, he's
and
cute.
yes, he's super cute. He eats carbon, and that's what he does. We have Sydney, who's the celebrator of differences, and true to himself. He's a great listener, thoughtful. We've got him somewhere on here. Oh yes, there. Where's Sydney? There's Sydney there on a little surfboard. We've got him on a little
Ah,
surfboard surfing, and
love.
yeah, and so we created all these different monsters, and each one has something it wants to talk about. And we took it further. We created all of these podcasts
Mm,
of affirmations. So, and it was our give back to moms and parents. And the affirmations was it was narrated by the Canadian music star Lights, and just beautifully done. It's
mm,
4 minutes each affirmation podcast is 4 minutes. It's meant to be shared with your child, and it really talks about all of the different ways of looking at yourself and of thinking of the world and how you can make the world a better place.
mm,
Um, and so today, in my view, brands are more than just product. As important as product is to me, it's also about storytelling and all of the different stories that you can tell through a brand. And
mm-hmm.
that's really what truly resonates with consumers today. But the product itself, I mean, we've got beautiful. The product is stunning in that the hand feel of the product. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
touch this for the price, an all organic piece, really quite amazing. And it's very indie in the way that we've picked colors. The color story is gender neutral for the most part as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we've put a lot of thought and a lot of energy into bringing something to market that I think is going to be really unique and is going to resonate with the consumer.
Yes, it sounds so amazing. And to your point about the storytelling, I love even just hearing what I heard over the past couple of minutes. And Joe, it's just amazing though, because I think most people recognize you as an icon in this world. And there's so many people out there who want to have a successful brand and quite frankly never quite get there. And you've been doing it for I think it's 36 years. and,
Yes, too
and I'm
long.
the I know, and I'm the era of Club Monaco,
Oh, yes.
which I loved and love still. And so, I think I'm hearing why you've been successful, but maybe give us a little bit more granularity to somebody starting a brand
Sure.
today.
Yeah, I think if I can reel back to when I first started. A lot of people don't know this, and I always hate to admit it, but I started as a chartered accountant, and
Oh.
uh, and I practiced for the 2 years to get my designation. And I walked into the partner's office and I said, "I'm leaving. I'm going into the fashion business." And he said,
Hmm.
"No, no, you've got a great future here." Anyway, we went out. We started a business with my brother and my mother, who was a couturier, and we started making dresses. And I learned very, very quickly within the first 6 months that really you had to be a brand in order to succeed. All the power was with either the retailers or the brands at that time. And and so we went down to New York to bring in a brand. We were going to license a brand, which is what all Canadians did. We were going to manufacture it here in Canada. We met with Oscar de la Renta, and we wanted his brand for Canada. He said fine. We had contracts drawn up, and then last moment, and this is where being naive, and I always talk to entrepreneurs about this: follow your heart, follow your dreams. We said, why are we licensing a brand? Why don't we create a brand? And why don't we become the licensors? And so we went out, hired a designer. We're going to make you famous. We're going to make you a brand. She quit within 3 months. She said she got a better offer. Then we brought in Alfred Sung. We said, look, we're going to make you famous. And within 3 years, he hit the cover of Maclean's magazine as the king of fashion. That everything about what we did, though, was about integrity of product, integrity of brand, hitting the market at the right time. Women were going into the workforce. They needed sportswear at the time, and it was really important that we hit the consumer exactly where we needed to be. I see too many times, I see entrepreneurs who really don't, they have a great idea, but they don't always match it up against the consumer. They don't always test their idea enough to ensure that there is a customer for what they want to produce. And then they spend a lot of time trying to get to market. And the other aspect of it is that in building brands, and particularly on the consumer side, there's many elements that go into it. And I think what's really critical is just finding that seam in the marketplace and really going after it and understanding what the consumer truly wants at a point in time. And it always changes. And it always evolves. And what's old is new, and what's new is old. I always go back. I love this one, which is, if the Woolworths five and dime stores had just lasted a little longer, they could have been the Dollaramas of today. When we first started Club Monaco, what we did at the time was we went direct to consumer at a retail level, direct to consumer. We cut out wholesale. A lot of people don't remember, but back then, every store was a multi-branded store. There was no such thing as a vertical store. Gap was called Generation Gap in 1985, and they were selling Levi jeans and other brands. So it was highly unusual at the time to go direct from manufacturing, which is kind of where I cut my teeth on manufacturing, to consumer. And we actually got there by accident because we started a concept, Club Monaco. We went to the major retailers. We went to Eaton's. We went to the Bay. We went to a bunch of them and said, look, we've come up with this new concept, and it's like unisex, and it's really cool. And they looked at it and they said, well, we don't get it. And we don't understand it. But now there was a problem. I had already ordered all the goods. They were all coming. They were all on the water. And so we decided to go direct to consumer at the time. And that's how really it was born, which also talks to, if you really have something great and you pivot and you find a way to make it happen. And again, I see this with entrepreneurs. The good entrepreneurs really understand how to make those pivots and how to deal with the adversity that comes up. And that's why it's better to bet on the jockey as opposed to the horse.
To make the pivot, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And I'm wondering as well, though, the fact that you had to pivot so quickly and go to the storefront opportunity.
Yeah.
The feel of that store, of a Club Monaco store, felt great. I mean, it felt clean. It felt new. It felt you wanted to go in there. I know in reading that, there was lineups. But
That's
to be able to make that happen so quickly, when you think of how long people spend on making a store concept. I actually used to cover equity retail at William Blair Equity Research. To get that concept right normally takes, I think, a lot of time. So what was that time? It must have been a very short time frame.
It was unbelievably short, number one. Number two, we had enough product to fill more than one store. So we had to open multiple stores at the same time to make it even more complicated. And because the brand it was brand new, there was no footfall that we could count on. And we couldn't get into the major malls. We were kind of going a little off pitch, as it's called. And so we put in a very, very aggressive marketing campaign, a very aggressive marketing campaign where we spent a lot of money. And I think part of that as well is the ability to deal with all of it financially. And dealing with your banks and getting them comfortable and And because all of a sudden you're going from, asset lending to cash flow lending, which is a very different situation, and having to get our bank on side at the time. And we weren't with the Schedule A bank; we were with factors, and trying to get them comfortable was not easy at the time. But we did it all. We opened, and yes, there were lineups for years. But the way we did it really was, again, skunkwork teams, able to get great people within our org at the time to work on the project. And even in any of these projects that we're working on today, Rise Little Earthling is one where, again, I'm working with people I've worked with for many years. They love to come aboard. They love the challenge of a new brand, and so I'm very fortunate to be able to call on a bunch of people that have done it before, and we work really well as a team.
But Joe, going back to when you first started, I mean, to be able to really determine who's going to be someone great to work with, I think that that's one of the most difficult skills or difficult aspects to get right. I've been there myself actually once, thinking that, if you're going to put in 150%, so of course everybody else would, but that's not always the case. So,
no,
at all.
Not.
How do so you must have a skill set there, or one of your family members does. Who has that, and what is it?
Well, I think one of the fortunate things for me is, I do always have good operating partners that I work with. I think it's about how to motivate a team. How do you motivate? So, I use another example. I get so excited about product and about attacking the market and imagery and imaging and your environment and how you put something together, that I think it becomes infectious. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody's going to put in the 120%, and that's okay. I get that. We got C players, we got B players, we got D players, we got some A players, and it's just about making everybody feel like they are part owners in the business, and that they are working towards this end goal that they can really see. And I think crafting a vision for a brand is super important, because then when you have that vision and you can communicate it very clearly as to where it's going and where you are going as a brand, people buy in, they opt in, they buy in, and then they can then communicate it very clearly to others. And that's really, and so to that extent, we would do things like, I'd cut people's hair, I would dress them. Today I wouldn't be able to get away with it, but back then, and anything I could do that would clearly tell the consumer who we are, what we are, and tell the rest of the team, this is who we are, this is what we are, this is what we believe in, these are our aesthetics, these are our goals. I think that motivates, and I think then you can. I always say, you take C players, you turn them into A players, and great teams that win are teams not made up of just superstars, but they're made up of a group of people that have a common goal and that can work together extremely well and make it happen. And so, in a way, you're a bit of a coach, you're a bit of a director. You bring together a group, and you create some magic.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm segueing a little bit here, but I think it's something that is always on my mind when I think about all the successful people I've been able to work with, Goldman Sachs and William Blair and Deutsche Bank, and in the news world as well, and meeting some of the really great money managers, how they manage their life. So when you're the coach, the director, the producer, the everything, what's your personal day like? Like, do you get up at 6 and do the yoga, or you do something? I know that. I'm not wrong, am I?
Well, you have to eat really well, because if you don't eat well, you don't have the energy level. So I've been a big believer in juicing for a long, long time, and I find that during the day, I usually will juice at lunchtime. I start with a very, very, very easy diet in the morning, which is, blueberries, yogurt, and a coffee, very strong coffee. And then I have a green juice at lunch, and that's it. And that takes me right to my martini at 6:30. So and I'm very lucky. I've got a wonderful wife and great kids, and
Yeah.
they've always been highly, highly supportive. And Kim, who's in the business, understands the passion you need and the time you and energy you need to put into the industry in order to be successful. So
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I mean, I think it's really important because when I think about sometimes when I go and speak to young women about starting a career in finance or whatever, and it is exhausting, my number one thing is, the how you eat and getting the sleep,
it's huge.
and your
It's huge.
relationships have to be healthy, all of them.
All of them. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's very difficult. And healthy relationships with your partners, your business partners, your staff,
Hmm.
um, all the people you interact with, the press,
Yeah.
your banks, you know, um, try and leave a positive trail behind you, and
Hmm.
positive energy, and it comes back to you. So
Hmm.
it's something that I work on, and I feel very, very fortunate. I've uh, we've created a lot of different brands. We have a brand with Staples. It's called Gray Matter, by Joe Mimran, and it's at Staples. And I started consulting to them a few years ago in the US, and they asked me to help them with their branding, sourcing, and product design. We designed a whole bunch of brands for them and products. And I said, here's my deal though. I want one brand that's my brand, and that we can distribute throughout your stores and e-commerce in Canada and the US. And they've been amazing. That's an amazing company on the move. It's the executive chair is John Lederer, who was at Loblaws for many years as the CEO. The president here in Toronto's David Boone. He's done a tremendous job in repositioning the business here in Canada. And they've gone from being a big box retailer to being the working, learning, growing company. Again, repositioning, telling the story of who they are, why they exist, what they do, with a lot of passion. And again, to be part of another great retail group has been a lot of fun. So,
And speaking of retail, let's get your take now in terms of what's been going on over the past more than 15
yeah.
months as it relates to COVID and the impact on retail. How do you see it?
Well, I mean, I think it's I think you can't talk about retail without talking about what's happened on the e-commerce side of the equation, because for some businesses it's been a boon. Even though they've had to close their physical stores, what has happened is, for some brands, and I know a bunch of them specifically, their business has actually skyrocketed without the fixed cost of stores. And so we've seen that. We've seen many people hurt terribly, the ones that have fixed rents and they just cannot get out of them, can't renegotiate them. Those have had to reorganize through double CAA, and they've had to, escape their commitments that way. The big box guys, I think, have done incredibly well. They've been very fortunate that legislation has wiped out competition. So, in one sense, they are really the big winners out of all of this. People do shop. Shopping is a very habitual experience, and once you get somebody to turn right instead of left, it's very, very hard to change those habits. And we know that e-commerce now has advanced by 5 to 7 years in terms of acceleration and adoption. Older people who were never on e-commerce before, they didn't find, they weren't comfortable with it, now have all adopted it. So I think you're going to see physical stores continue to be under pressure going forward. I think you're going to get an initial blip because I think there will be that effect of getting out and celebrating, and sort of the Roaring '20s effect. I do think, though, that retailers that have, again, something to say physically that's unique and different and a reason to be, I think will continue to perform. I think brands that are stronger in e-commerce will look to stores in order to get new customers in a much cheaper way. It is so expensive now to get new customers through e-commerce today, much more than it was. That's why you're seeing many native e-commerce brands moving into physical stores. That was a trend, certainly before COVID, that was happening, and it was really because of the cost of attracting new customers, much cheaper. I mean, you can go to a mall, a AAA mall, and you'll have far more traffic in one day than you will at the per head cost than it would be to try and track them online. So I think you're going to see a shakeup there. I still think we are going to continue to contract, and we will go from the 1,500 malls in America down to about 1,000. Maybe slightly less. So there's still a lot of contraction, I believe, will come. I think irrelevant retailers are going to, and a lot of them are, they're sizing down. Department stores, the few that are standing, I think, still have a big opportunity to do something special.
What could they do? What could they do?
Well, I think, first of all, what they have, which people don't realize, and which was seen in what Saks did in the United States when Saks sold their e-commerce. They sold 25% of their e-commerce business for a pretty big price. They have an incredible customer database that they can really. The cost of that for any other e-commerce business would be enormous to try and achieve. And now they're moving into being a marketplace. And as a marketplace, their valuation just can go up quite dramatically. And then as their store base starts to decrease, they can start to do more and more exciting things within the stores that they do have, and their e-commerce piece will, I think, continue to grow in value as they figure out what they're going to do with the physical stores. So I do believe that they're continuing, the ones that are left are continuing to innovate, and I think that's going to be really interesting. This whole idea of entertainment in stores, the idea of restaurants and different types of boutiques, and again, it's about trying to find, people will be hungry for a social experience. And I think if you can deliver that to the customer, I think, and I think the smart ones will figure out how to deliver that to the customers, and will take advantage of people wanting to get out and be social. There's a group of stores which is owned by Michael Cole, who flies under the radar here in Canada, and he owns, I don't know, 1,000 stores or whatever, and performing incredibly well. And he's figured it out. He's got the key to success when it comes to physical stores. And so there's always a winner, there's always a loser. It's ever-changing landscape for retail, for consumer products. We're seeing a big trend right now in circular economy. People are very interested in secondhand clothes. They're very interested in vintage bags. We're involved in a business, LXR, which one of my business partners, Cam DePrada, runs now. And that is, his business, e-commerce, is growing dramatically, and people are very interested in vintage handbags and wanting to purchase
Mm-hmm.
without the guilt of adding yet another
Zero?
consumer product. Yeah, zero
Oh,
waste.
yeah,
Zero
exact.
waste, right?
Zero waste. Yeah. Well, I love consignment buying.
Oh
Love it.
yeah, yeah. It's when you look at Real, their biggest problem right now is just getting product and having enough product to fill the demand.
Yeah.
And again, a completely new model. I mean, that model was created less than 10 years ago. Vintage stores was really the purview of designers. Designers were the ones that went into vintage stores for inspiration,
Mm.
musty old clothes. I used to go into vintage warehouses in England or in Italy, and you'd look at old military clothes or whatever for inspiration. But today it's absolutely really a powerful business model. Rent the runway,
Mm-hmm.
another one, um, and it all stems from, I always say, to be a fashion designer, fashion follower, you have to be a sociologist. You have to understand where society has been, where it's going. it,
Mm-hmm.
it is a real reflection of what trends you should be jumping on. Somebody will say, "Oh well, the sneaker trend was the sneaker was a fad." Well, sneakers came in the '70s, and if you look at where they are today, these are long-term trends that are really, really important for consumers to understand, for business people to understand, and to figure out, as a sociologist, how do I serve that need.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you as well. I mean, what do you see going on with psychology today in terms of what might be the next trend?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been talking about it. I do think it's all about voting with your wallet. I think on social issues. I think influencers are it's a new way of marketing. Marketing has become far more complex than it has ever been. It used to be a time where, it was actually quite easy. You'd buy billboards, you'd buy bus shelters, you do a deal with Condé Nast, and boom, you have an instant brand if you've got the money. Today, you have to talk to your consumer in so many multiple ways and so many different platforms. You have to come from a place of integrity. You have to mean what you say. You have to be transparent in how you do business. I mean, it is so much more complex, and yet it is probably easier for an entrepreneur today to get into business because all they need is a laptop, and you can source from anywhere in the world. Open sourcing is there. You can ship from anywhere in the world. There's no regulations really that you have to deal with, and so you could be a competitor overnight. And it used to be, I used to always say, in the fashion business, I had my competitor was anybody with a sewing machine. Today, my competitor is anybody with a laptop or an iPhone,
Wow.
and that's really where it's gone. It's that competitive a market, but also that big an opportunity for anybody who wants to get into it.
But that's pretty amazing. In this, going back to what you said, and then also, of course, bring technology into it, which is that it sounds like it's so costly to acquire a customer, a consumer via Instagram or Facebook or what have you. I don't think a lot of people actually know that the costs have
Yeah,
increased so much that you're almost better off to have a bricks and mortar. I mean, and
it's
I get so many ads on Instagram. And so what you're telling me, and they're for cheaper versions of things, which I love. I'm a value buyer. But you're telling me that they cost a lot to get that ad to me?
absolutely. It's very, very costly. Everybody thinks that they can just And I see this all the time with entrepreneurs. They open up their website, they put some product on there, and they think, oh, well, it's just going to happen. No, you better get a real marketing campaign going. You better spend some real money in order to attract customers to your site and to be able to sell product, unless you have something unbelievably unique that everybody is clamoring for. But to get on that front page of Amazon, or to get on that SEO search, top of that SEO search, it takes money. It takes either real ingenuity and real uniqueness, or it takes a lot of money. And today, like I said, there's more and more and more competition. I mean, I'm not, I don't want to scare any budding entrepreneurs, because I would rather be an entrepreneur today than 30 years ago. I think there's way more opportunity today than there ever was. I just think the competition is greater, but the opportunity is massive.
Why do you say that, and what do you mean by it?
Well, I mean that first of all, capital markets. Capital is much more fluid today than it's ever been. Imagine how many ways you can raise capital today. Imagine private equity today versus where we were 30 years ago. In the Canadian marketplace, there was no way you could finance a fashion business in Canada. This just could not happen. We were the first fashion company to go public in 1980. I think it was 86. I can't remember. 87. We couldn't even show pictures. We got an exemption. We were able to show pictures in our presentation, prospectus. We got a special exemption because we were a fashion business. But it's amazing the difference today. Like you can raise money on Kickstarter. You can raise money on. There's so many different platforms you can raise money in advance. There's so many private equity groups you can go to raise money. It's a much better time to be an entrepreneur. And you can be mobile. Borders don't mean anything, as I was saying earlier, and you can be totally mobile. You don't have to get on an airplane to get anywhere.
What about the demand, though, the end demand, and going back to something you said in terms of really understanding and going after the market? Is there a size that comes to mind? Like, do you always have kind of a number in terms of the size when you're thinking of whatever it is you're creating?
Yes. So for me, that's why I love these distribution deals. I did consulting for Kroger, for example. I finished my contract with them last year. I was consulting with them for 4 years on how they should structure their apparel business within Kroger. Kroger is the largest food retailer, as you know, in the world. They do 120 billion a year. And so, we went in there and we helped them with that. And the buying power you have as a Kroger with that number of stores is just fantastic. Staples has wonderful buying power. Toys R Us has good buying power. There's built-in distribution. So I personally like those types of arrangements because it gives you the instant buying power you need. When you're building from scratch, again, you have to build. You have to build to get to a certain critical mass, and that's where a lot of people also stumble right out of the gate, is that they can't hit those minimums. And if you don't get the minimums, you can't get the pricing. And so it's a vicious circle for an entrepreneur. But yeah, you have to understand your market. You have to understand how much you can sell of something, whether it's a weighted blanket. I got a call from somebody the other day who said, I'm in the weighted blanket business and I'm doing X amount of volume. And well, that's fantastic. Single item. It's a nice little lifestyle business, but it won't be a $300 million a year business because you just can't sell that many weighted blankets. But they could do well. They can, they've got a nice little e-commerce business. They could take home a couple 100,000. at
Yeah.
the end of the year, and they're happy.
Yeah. That I have two of those blankets.
Do you?
I
Good.
do.
So
They're
there you are.
wonderful.
Yeah, yeah.
But I can appreciate the size of the market. Um, just to kind of wrap up a little bit and kind of talk about things that would inspire viewers and listeners. I want some of these conversations to be a little bit on the aspirational and inspirational side. I mean, we've gotten a lot
Yeah.
of that from you already, just because I think it's your being.
Mhm.
But what are kind of some of those words of wisdom you like to pass on and share?
I think I'll go back to Rise Little Earthling. I think a world where you lead with kindness is really important. I think kindness is an operative word today. I think we've gone through a very difficult time as a society. I think we've got to be very sensitive to the people around us, how they want to work, their needs at home. Raising kids over the last year and a half has been really tough for a lot of parents. I think we have to be very understanding of that, and I think we have to be more tolerant of each other, and we have to be careful not to tear each other apart. I think that is, to me, really a world that I don't want to live in, if
Mm-hmm.
that's how we think about things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just try and create a beautiful environment around yourself. Even when you're working at home, just try and find ways to inspire yourself, whether it's doing things you've never challenged yourself to do before, or it's just creating. I love to create an environment where I feel good. It smells good. It's
Yeah.
clean. It's organized. These are things that some people, we take for granted, that everybody does that, but not everybody knows how to do that. And I think
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to help people sort of live a better life, live a more inspired life. These are all things I'm interested in, and would
Mm-hmm.
love to just keep doing, and
Mm-hmm.
designing beautiful things. Design matters. So that's the core of my philosophy, and being kind. If people can just bear that in mind.
I love that. Joey, we'll leave it on that note. Thank you so much, as
Yes, it
always, for our
was, Catherine,
conversations.
great to be here with you today.